The screen bursts into chaos, a cacophony of explosions, screams, and the deafening roar of starfighters slicing through the atmosphere. You can feel the heat of plasma blasts scorching the air, hear the metallic groan of collapsing structures as they crumble under relentless bombardment. Commander Elias Voss stands amidst the wreckage of a battlefield on the desolate planet Erithus 7, his armor scorched and dented, blood trickling down his temple. His breaths are ragged, his body battered, but still defiant. Around him lies the grim aftermath of what was once a proud squad of soldiers, his squad. Lifeless bodies, swallowed by ash and smoke, their faces frozen in expressions of fear or determination. Each one a friend, a comrade, now gone. A desperate transmission crackles in his earpiece, barely audible over the din of destruction. Commander, we're pulling out. You need to fall back. The voice is frantic, pleading, but there's no retreat for Elias. Now he's alone behind enemy lines. His communicator goes silent after that final plea, leaving only static and the haunting echoes of war around him. He knows he's been abandoned here, left to die like so many others before him. But Elias isn't ready to give up, not yet. As he drags himself across the war-torn terrain, searching for shelter or supplies, something catches his eye, a flicker of movement near a collapsed building. At first, he thinks it's another trap, another Zyphar ambush waiting to claim his life. He approaches cautiously, weapon drawn, every muscle tense with anticipation. Then he sees her, an injured Zafari woman, her crystalline skin shimmering faintly, even under layers of grime and blood. She clutches her swollen abdomen, visibly pregnant, her breathing shallow but determined. Her golden eyes lock onto his, not with hatred but with pleading desperation. For a moment, time freezes. This is the face of the enemy, the species that has slaughtered billions of humans, but it is also the face of someone fighting for survival. And then she whispers one word in broken human speech. Please. Her voice cuts through the chaos like a blade, sharp and raw. It's not just a plea for mercy, it's a cry for something deeper, something primal, life itself. In that instant, Elias feels the weight of everything he's ever fought for crashing down on him. This isn't just a battlefield anymore. This is a crossroads where choices define destinies. Elias hesitates, torn between duty and instinct. Everything he knows tells him to eliminate this threat, to pull the trigger, and erase any chance of Zyphar reinforcements being born from her womb. After all, these creatures have devastated entire worlds, wiped out civilizations without remorse. They've taken everything from him, his home, his family, his peace of mind. Yet, as he stares at her trembling form, memories flood back, memories he'd buried deep within himself. He thinks of his late wife, who always believed wars were fought because people stopped seeing each other as individuals. He remembers holding her hand as she whispered her dying wish, "Promise me you'll find a way to end this madness." Saria, sensing his internal struggle, doesn't beg for mercy for herself. Instead, she places a trembling hand over her belly and pleads for her unborn children. Not them, she gasps, tears streaming down her angular cheeks. Her voice cracks with emotion, her golden eyes filled with both terror and hope. Something inside Elias cracks too. Against all logic, against every fiber of training drilled into him, he lowers his weapon. With limited medical supplies scavenged from the battlefield, he begins treating her wounds, knowing full well that if discovered, both their lives are forfeit. As days pass, they navigate a razor-thin line between survival and capture, their mutual distrust slowly giving way to an uneasy alliance. They share moments of silence, punctuated by stolen glances and guarded conversations. Saria speaks haltingly in broken human, while Elias tries to piece together fragments of Zafari language. Slowly, they begin to see each other not as enemies, but as survivors bound together by circumstance. Their journey becomes a test of endurance, not just physically, but emotionally. They traverse hostile jungles teeming with predators, evade relentless cipher patrols, and endure harsh weather conditions that push them to their limits. The jungle is alive with danger, venomous creatures lurking in shadows, rivers infested with carnivorous fish, and skies patrolled by drones scanning for survivors. Every step forward feels like 2 steps back, yet they press on, driven by sheer willpower. Along the way, Elias learns fragments of Saria's story, how she was forced into service by the Dominion, how she dreamed of raising her children far from the horrors of war. She tells him about her own losses, her mate killed in battle, her dreams shattered by the relentless march of conquest. In turn, Elias shares glimpses of his own shattered past, his lost family, his guilt over surviving when so many didn't. These shared stories create a fragile bond between them, a bridge built on pain and understanding. When Saria goes into labor during an intense chase through a ravine, Elias must act quickly. Using rudimentary tools and sheer determination, he delivers twin infants Nova and Kyle amidst gunfire and collapsing cliffs. The scene is raw and visceral, a stark contrast to the violence surrounding them. Holding the newborns in his arms, Elias feels a surge of emotions he hasn't allowed himself to feel in years: hope, fear, and an overwhelming sense of responsibility. These tiny lives represent something greater than either of them, a chance for renewal, for redemption. Just as they begin to believe escape might be possible, tragedy strikes. During a final confrontation with the Zephyr Patrol, Saria shields Elias and the twins, taking a fatal shot meant for them. As she lies dying in his arms, she presses her children's tiny hands into his. "Protect them," she whispers, her voice barely audible over the chaos. "Make them better than us." Her last breath leaves her body, and Elias is left cradling 2 fragile lives in a world bent on destruction. It's a promise he vows to keep, no matter the cost. In that moment, Elias feels the full weight of what he's taken on. These children are not just symbols of hope, they are reminders of everything he's lost and everything he could lose again. But they are also proof that love can exist even in the darkest corners of the universe. With Saria's death, Elias becomes more than a soldier, he becomes a father. Years later, Elias lives as a fugitive on a remote colony world, hiding from both human authorities and Zephyr enforcers. Nova and Kyle grow up under his watchful eye, learning about both their human and Zephyri heritage. They train in combat techniques unique to each species, blending agility and strategy while also absorbing lessons in diplomacy and empathy. Elias teaches them to fight not just with weapons, but with words, to understand the value of compromise and cooperation. Yet, despite Elias's efforts, the twins face prejudice wherever they go. Humans see them as reminders of the enemy, the Zephyr view them as impure abominations. Schoolyards become battlegrounds, markets turn hostile, and even allies grow wary of their presence. Through it all, Elias remains steadfast, teaching them that identity isn't defined by bloodlines but by choices. He shows them pictures of their mother, telling them stories of her courage and sacrifice. He reminds them that they carry pieces of 2 worlds within them, and that makes them stronger, not weaker. Eventually, the war finds them. Bounty hunters track them down, mercenaries raid their sanctuary, and high-ranking officials from both factions demand answers. When a covert operation nearly claims their lives, Nova and Kyle realize running is no longer an option. They decide to take a stand, not as victims, but as catalysts for change. Drawing on everything Elias taught them, they devise a daring plan to infiltrate key diplomatic meetings and expose the futility of continued conflict. They use their dual heritage to their advantage, navigating both human and Zephyri societies with ease. They gather intelligence, forge alliances, and plant seeds of doubt among those who cling to old hatreds. Along the way, they encounter resistance from hardened generals unwilling to negotiate, from zealots who see peace as weakness, and from ordinary citizens too scarred by war to trust again. But Nova and Kyle refuse to give up. They know the stakes are higher than ever, and failure means condemning future generations to the same cycle of violence. Nova and Kyle orchestrate a series of bold moves, using their combined skills to outwit assassins, broker temporary truces, and force leaders to confront uncomfortable truths. Elias joins them in the fight. Incredible feats. Together, they manage to broadcast a message across both civilizations, a plea for unity backed by undeniable evidence of shared suffering and potential prosperity. The climax unfolds during a tense summit where Nova and Kyle stand before assembled leaders, challenging them to imagine a future free from war. Their words resonate deeply, cutting through centuries of mistrust and animosity. They speak not just as representatives of their respective species, but as living proof that coexistence is possible. Their presence forces leaders to confront them, humanity or lack thereof in their actions. Some resist, clinging to power and tradition, but others listen, moved by the sincerity in Nova and Kyle's voices. Though peace doesn't come overnight, seeds of change begin to sprout. Some humans in Zyphar rally behind Nova and Kyle, inspired by their courage and vision. Others resist, clinging to old hatreds, but the tide is shifting. In the final scene, Elias watches from the shadows as his children address a joint assembly, their voices steady and resolute. His voice echoes softly, "In the end, war did not define us. Love did." Nova and Kyle standing side by side, symbols of unity in a fractured galaxy. Behind them, stars twinkle like promises of a brighter tomorrow. Elias smiles faintly, his heart swelling with pride and relief. He knows the road ahead won't be easy, but for the first time in decades, he dares to hope. Hope that someday, the scars of war will fade, replaced by bridges built on compassion and understanding. Lingering question, what kind of legacy will we choose to leave behind?